All right, so everyone has Visual Studio up. You have these three variables set, right? We're all here? Okay. So within our start, by default in Unity, there's this problem. When we click play, you'll notice our cursor can go anywhere on the screen, which is, I mean, fine for some programs, but for a game, you don't want your cursor to be there. So what we'll do is we'll enter in this code called cursor with a capital C dot lock state equals cursor lock mode dot locked, and then a semicolon. And then make sure you have this semicolon, otherwise it won't work. And then every time you change something in your code, so every time you finish typing out something, you'll want to press Control S. Because if you don't save your code, it's not going to update. So if I go to Unity and then I click play, I'll show you what that bit of code did. So now you can see the cursor is gone because it's locked to the game window. So now it won't go anywhere outside of the game window. If you want to get it back, press escape and it pops up right in the middle there. So that makes it so that we can't basically just take our cursor anywhere and it's captive to the window. Okay, now we'll move on to our update function. And everything within this update function is going to happen continuously every single frame. So we want to put here, so in here we'll want to put our things that will happen as long as the game is running. So basically for the whole time the game is running, everything in here will happen every frame. So Unity has this great way of accepting inputs called input.getAxis. And you can change these axes within Unity itself. But for right now, they're all set up perfectly, exactly the way we want them. So we don't need to change anything. We can just create a variable called float mouse x equals input.getAxis, and then parentheses, and then quotation marks, mouse with a capital M space x. And then we'll do times, so just a little asterisk, mouse sensitivity times time.delta time. And then we're going to do that again for the y input. And you can type it all out, or you can just copy paste the line. So just highlight it, and then Control C, Control V, and then change this to y and y. And if you're not comfortable doing that, just type it out again. It's fine. So basically what we did, we created a function that's going to check for the mouse's X position and the mouse's Y position. And that is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. So your monitor is a coordinate plane, right? Mouse X will track the mouse's X position, its horizontal position, and mouse Y will track the mouse's Y position, its vertical position. So basically we multiply the coordinate by our mouse sensitivity variable that we set up here. So we'll multiply that coordinate by our sensitivity to change how quickly the camera will turn as we rotate. Time.delta time is a bit of a complicated thing, so go ahead and listen up for this part. It's not super important that you understand how this works, but it's important that you understand why. So time.delta time, basically, it will cause the function to become frame independent. So right now we have things running in our update, which happens every frame. There's another function called fixed update. Don't do this, I'm just showing it for example. There's another function called fixed update that updates based on time.delta time instead of every frame. And what that means is time.delta time checks the time between frames. So it happens in real time instead of frame-based. This can be nice for stuff like this, where you want it to update, since it's our cursor and our camera, we want that to update much more fluidly than 60 times a second. So by doing time.delta time, it'll update in real time instead of frame rate. Does that make sense? Basically, if none of that made sense, just in case none of that made any sense, this determines how fast the camera moves. This makes it smooth. That's the basics of it. But time.delta time is kind of hard to understand, so I don't blame you if that kind of went over your head. Okay, So don't write this next part down, but I'm going to show you an easier way to do this. So next what we want to do is take our X rotation, which again in Unity is our horizontal position, so it's this, and we want to get the mouse's Y position, because if the X is this axis going this way, and we want our camera to rotate up and down around this axis, we need to get the mouse's vertical position. Does that make sense? So as we go up and down, it'll rotate up and down along that axis. So what we're going to do, again, don't write this down, I'm just going to show you the hard way of doing this. We can do X rotation equals X rotation minus mouse Y. And then all the programmers in the room cringe at how I just wrote that. Because there's a very easy way to do this. So instead of having minus mouse Y, we can just do X rotation minus equals mouse Y. And that's the same thing. So go ahead and write this line down, because this is the exact same thing that I just wrote. So how this works is it will add on this value, or it will subtract this value from this value, and then treat that as the new baseline. So basically what that means is if this is 0 and this is 1, 0 minus 1 is negative 1, this value is now negative 1. So negative 1 minus negative 1 is now negative 2. So you can kind of see it's like, negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. So you can see it's just setting the value to the new one, and then it's kind of going and just placing in the new one every time. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand why I'm doing this as minus equals? Yeah, so one thing I will mention, something you need to get in the habit of doing immediately is commenting your code. So if we go above this original line, if I want to make a comment to myself that the computer won't read but will help me read my code later on, I'll put 2 slashes, should be right next to your right shift key. I'll put 2 slashes and then I'll say anything. So the computer can't read what goes on in this comment. I can put anything I want. This is just to help me read my own code. So I'll go ahead and in this comment I'll put get the mouse's X and Y position. And you don't have to write that. You can write whatever you want. This is for you. So as long as it helps you understand what you did and why you did it, that's good. This is great, but what this is going to do is, since we have our camera rotating along our x-axis, which is, again, the horizontal one in Unity, or one of the horizontal ones in Unity, since we're rotating up and down along our x-axis, we're not capping it at all, so we can just keep rotating like around and around and around, which is a problem, because we don't want the player, you can try it right now, look down, you can't just keep spinning your head around. So we don't want to be able to do that. So there's an easy way to clamp, to lock a value between two other values, and it's called clamp. So we'll go ahead and type this out, and we'll do x rotation equals math f dot clamp, parentheses, and then within these parentheses, it takes 3, so within the parentheses are things called arguments or parameters. So either one you hear us say, we're referring to the same thing. This takes 3 parameters. The value you are referring to, the bottom value, and the highest value. So we want to modify our x rotation. We want it, and then comma. We want it to be between negative 90 f, comma, and positive 90 f, and then semicolon. So what that will do is it will prevent us from going further than 90 degrees down or 90 degrees up. It will lock us between those two values. Okay, so now, after that, we need to make the player actually rotate around the y-axis. And this part might seem wrong because I'm going to be using mouse X to rotate around the y-axis. However, that's just because in Unity, the y-axis, again, remember, is the vertical one. So as we rotate around that, we need the mouse's horizontal position to rotate sideways. Okay? So it might seem confusing, but it's just converting from a 2D to a 3D plane can be confusing. So then we'll do transform dot local rotation equals And then just follow along with this. I'll explain what it means after we get it typed out. Quaternion dot Euler x rotation 0f comma 0f. And then semicolon. Okay, so quaternion dot Euler, I'm not going to lie, I'm not 100% sure what it means, but I know what it does. In Unity, this is how we control angles in degrees. So basically by saying we're setting the quaternion.Euler rotation degree angle to 0 and 0. So this means they won't rotate on anything other than our x-axis. So they won't rotate around anything other than our x-axis. And since we're using .Euler, it's going to be in degrees. Not radians, not anything else, degrees. And then after that, we'll go player body dot rotate parentheses vector 3 dot up times mouse x. Okay. So to explain what I just wrote out, this part means we are rotating by x rotation number of degrees to determine how much the player should rotate as they move the mouse around. Vector 3 dot up. Vector 3 is like, I mean, you all know how a coordinate plane works. I mean, you have an x and a y position, right? A vector 3 is a three-dimensional coordinate position. So you have an x, y, and a z. So by saying vector 3 dot up, you have your direction. It's basically a coordinate with a magnitude. And it's saying you have your vector 3 dot up, so you're always facing upright. You're always going straight up and making sure that the player doesn't rotate like side to side. And then, yeah, we would be able to rotate the camera all kinds of crazy degrees and angles. If we didn't have this on, you'd be able to turn your character sideways, and we don't want that. Okay, so let's go back in. So make sure you save again, Control S, and then go into Unity, and you'll see it'll compile our C# scripts. Just gotta wait for that. Okay, now if I play the game, I'll just click maximize. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it so you can see. If I click maximize on play and then click play, the play button is up here. You can see now we can rotate our camera. And now if I try to go up further than 90 degrees, you can see I'm stuck. And if I go down, you can see I'm also stuck. And actually, I can show you guys what it does without the clamp. I can show you why we have that. So you can see without the clamp, if you guys look up here for 1 second, if you can see without the clamp, I can just keep spinning around and around and around. And this isn't very realistic or user-friendly. We don't really want this in games because then I can do stuff like this. And that's not fun for anyone to play with. Yep. Some of you might have noticed that in Unity, when you're playing the game, your camera is a little slow. So if you want to change that, again, just click on main camera and go down to our script. You can change mouse sensitivity to anything you want. So in order to test that, I'll click the play button and I'll show you how this works. So let me not maximize it. So I didn't uncomment my. Here we go. Okay, so you might notice that your camera is probably moving a little slow for you. And if you don't like that, you can go over here and change mouse sensitivity to anything. So if I just set this to 1,000 and then click, you can see it's going to move way faster now. Like, probably way too fast. This is not controllable very easily. But then, notice how I'm playing right now. Notice how I'm in play mode, so I can modify it right now. Are we good over there? Do I need to slow down for a second? You good? Okay, so notice how I'm in play mode while I was changing that variable. So I'm currently playing and I changed mouse sensitivity to 1,000, so now it's like really fast. If I stop playing, that value changes back. Changes you make in play mode do not save. I want to reiterate that. Changes you make while this play button is blue, while you are in play mode, are not saved. This is great for testing things because, say I don't know what I want my mouse sensitivity to be. I don't want to start and stop my game 5,000 times to figure out the right value. I can just change it while it's playing. Let's try 300. And that feels comfortable to me. So now I have this value. I know 300 is what I want. So I'll stop playing. It'll change back. And now I'll enter in 300. And now it will save.